All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in. Today, we're going to be covering one of the most important topics that we have to address today, and that is food sovereignty. We have on the call today, we've got Nicole Kimpton. We are broadcasting live. She's from, well, do you want to say where you're from? Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Nicole Kimpton. I'm from Cochrane, Alberta, and born and raised in Calgary, actually, so one of the few. And yeah, I'm happy to be here tonight.
Awesome, awesome. And tuning in from Edmonton, we're going to be discussing a mission that NutritionCraft has to bring food sovereignty to our communities, at least show them how to self-govern their food supply. We've got a lot of unique challenges right now in the way that the world has gone and the way that our governance systems have progressed to the point now where we're watching farmers kind of get the land taken out from under them, so to speak. And we highly, highly value the local farmer that is taking care of the land and with responsible stewardship. And we recognize that in order for us to maintain this kind of stewardship for our land, we have to, together as communities, make sure that we support those farmers. Now, one of the biggest challenges that we face going into something like this is the orchestrated famine that we have today is not visible. You know, we Nicole and I have been talking over the last 2-3 weeks as we're organizing this community where we're helping communities decentralize their food supplies. And you know, this topic comes up all the time about how much the food in the grocery stores simply isn't that nutritious anymore. And so it's not that there's a shortage of things to eat, but rather there certainly is a shortage of food, and that's why it appears invisible. Or, you know, that's why it's invisible to most people. They have this old mentality that food is at the grocery store, and the food at the grocery store isn't providing them the nutrients that would actually help them have a full and vibrant well-being. And Nicole, and you know a lot more about, you know, what is missing in our nutrition. Why don't you go ahead and take her from here for a bit?
Well, thanks very much, Paul. There's a lot of nutrition that's missing from our food in the stores. I mean, one of the biggest things is there's a lot of processed foods. Our meat is actually very processed, and I know that sounds kind of odd when you're thinking in terms of meat, because isn't it just from the animal gets packaged, shipped off, and sent to the stores? And unfortunately, it's not anymore. So one of the things that and the LifeCraft Clinic that we've seen quite a bit of every day is just how poor nutrition has been and the inflammation that is in everybody's body. And it's putting a damper on not just our overall body health, but also our mental health. So our ability to regulate our moods, have a balanced sort of neurochemistry, it's limited by the appropriateness of the diet. And so when you're buying things from the grocery store, when they're processed, you're missing all of those vital nutrients that you should be getting from an animal source or things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you know, this actually lends right into the next challenge that we face, and that's how much misinformation there is regarding nutrition. Like, people genuinely believe that, you know, even if they're getting the organic beef from the special section, you know, at Save On Foods or whatever, that they're getting quality meat. But it's important that people recognize that there's actually very little trust that is deserving to those distribution models right now. And it's I foresee over the next 2-3 months an incredible opportunity for people to step up and start facilitating these transactions between farmers who are doing things right and making sure that these animals are raised in ancestrally consistent ways, and the people who value good, wholesome nutrition.
Well, and if you go back to even that comment of ancestrally consistently raised or ancestrally raised, um, a lot of people don't even know what that means. And so when we're talking about an ancestrally raised animal, it means what they would have gotten before we came along. So, for example, a cow, they should be eating beef or grass. They shouldn't be eating the grains and things like that. That wouldn't have been available to them back in the day. And so when we talk about ancestrally consistent, it is actually just going back to our roots and going back to what is natural for our bodies. And in turn, that also is what we're talking about for ourselves, is that we're actually having an ancestrally consistent diet for our bodies, because that's how we'll fully nourish our bodies.
Yeah. Now, let's talk a little bit about this, because it's in order to overcome these challenges. NutritionCraft, you've created kind of infrastructure for communities to evaluate what is good food. How do we make sure that our farmers are doing a good job? How do we come together as a community and make sure that these farmers are properly supported? And then on a greater level, how is it that we can make sure that our communities are managing the land in such a way that optimizes our food supply? You have the 4 pillars. So let's talk about how that first pillar can help people with this pandemic of misinformation.
Well, I think a little bit of background sort of on NutritionCraft, just so that we know and how we came to be and what we're about. We're a comprehensive program that we wanted to create something for our community, or for a community, that can come together in vibrant health and in wellness, because that is our birthright. That is what's available to us when we talk about this foundation of an ancestrally consistent nutrition. So with NutritionCraft, what we want to offer is courses and recipes and workshops and things like that are going to be a learning experience for everybody to come together in that community. And so the 4 pillars are our foundation, and we believe that nutrition needs to be based on truth, and then we need the food that goes along with it, our community, and stewardship. So the 4 pillars are truth, community, food, and then stewardship. And they all go hand in hand with one another, because if we don't have the truth about nutrition, then we can't offer those resources for the community to get the most beneficial food. And through those 3 pillars, we've created something that's called stewardship. And that is where the farmers really get to hone in on taking care of those animals, and then those animals then provide nutrients for the earth, and it just becomes a full cycle where it's earth, animal, human, and it just goes back to the earth. And so everything comes into balance.
Isn't that something, eh? How well nature treats us.
Yeah, it's amazing.
What have you noticed? The farmers that you talk to that follow this, like, what do you notice about them that's different from, say, people who are more accustomed to large, like big pharma?
They're just excited. They're so excited to have somebody that's willing to introduce this concept and to go back to them being able to raise their animals, because essentially the farmers, that's what they want. They want the best for their animals. Then they want their best that we're being given from their animals. And when it's able to have that cycle where it just sort of repeats, it's sort of rinse, cycle, repeat, and it makes a really big difference. And they're amazing to chat with and to talk to, and feel very close knit. It's family. It's not just a community or they're farmers. It's like they've become family.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right. So, pillar 1.
Pillar 1.
Let's dive right in. One of the things that we've noticed is that the truth is always controversial, right? And it's like, how is it possible after how many thousands of years we've been knowing how to eat food, that we're still arguing over what's healthy? Right? And yet here we are, right? And that and it's not wrong. In fact, I think it's kind of comical sometimes how, people do get caught up in certain ideologies and cling to them, and it very well may have been a choice, a diet choice that they had that served them. And like I remember when I went vegan, and I think, yeah, you've went through that same journey as well. And when I
Mhm.
went vegan, right away I noticed the changes in my body, and they were miraculously what I was saying I wanted in that moment. But that there was also a downside, that there was actually a cost to that to that lifestyle as well. And it was something that didn't serve me. Again, some people can live with the deficiencies that I couldn't. In the same way, they can't live with the deficiencies that I can. And that we're finding more and more that when it comes to people who live in areas like Alberta, that we as people here, we are more likely to thrive on foods with not only have less inflammation properties that are inflammatory, but also things that we know are available year round.
Mhm.
Whereas, a lot of places that have plants growing everywhere all the time, it's so readily available. Like you don't even like you don't have to spend any labor to get your food because it's just right there, right? And because it's a different place of the world, the nutrients are different. Like we have to recognize that, we're not that far from the ice age 6 months a year. And during the ice age, the people that ate meat survived.
Yeah.
so, I mean, regardless of what we believe, nutrition is or isn't, that's a fundamental truth that we can bring to the table in support of the choices that we're making. It's not just backing by the results that I got in 2012 after forsaking the veganism and incorporating meat into my diet. The transformation in my body was incredible, and that's something that I'm going by for sure. But let's just consider the greater truth, and that is we wouldn't be here today if we didn't eat meat.
Absolutely. And I think that that's a challenge for a lot of people. I definitely am not one to say don't do something or do something. But when you're coming together to discuss a topic of things, there are some hard truths. And oftentimes it's difficult to look at those hard truths and accept them. So one of the biggest things that we want to do with NutritionCraft is we want to be able to offer those things so that they can come at a softer, more gentle approach, where we'll give you the information and we'll give you the tools, and you get to research for yourself. Because if you would have told me 5 years ago that I would be eating the way that I'm eating, or along the path that I'm on now, where I'm learning about all of this nutrition, I mean, there are things that blow my mind every day. And
Mhm.
and it's not that someone has told me this is right and that's wrong. It's I can feel the differences in my body. And like yourself, I was also a vegan for a number of years, and I did end up getting sick, and that's okay because that's what shifted me into something else, so that I learned about my body and the inflammation and everything else. And so what we're here to talk about is just that there are narratives that are written in everything, and you can find something to support your paradigm, your programming, if that's what you believe. But when you actually take a step back and you neutrally look at the information and the results, there are some, like you said, hard truths that actually point you in the direction of that ancestrally consistent way of thinking. And back when our ancestors were roaming the earth and it was ice age, and yes, they were hunter gatherers, but that was such a short time frame that they would go and they would eat in that manner, that what was readily available was when the men would go out and they would hunt, and that would feed the families for a long period of time. But so the truth just breaks it down into smaller amounts so that you can digest it in a smaller amount. So you can say, okay, today I'm going to look at oxalates. What is an oxalate and how does it affect my body? What is it? What foods are it in? And if I eat these foods, how do I feel? And really take that moment for yourself to look at it and say, oh, I actually don't really feel that great if this is all I've eaten. And so I would say maybe looking at some oxalates, or look up oxalates and see what it is and what foods that they're in. And I challenge you to take yourself on to do something different. Maybe remove some of those foods that are in that grouping and see what you find. See how it makes you feel. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, entirely. Okay, great. So, yeah, that's when people can approach this whole topic or any topic from a perspective of let's do the research about these ingredients instead of just painting, instead of just painting a picture, good or bad, on a specific ingredient, like a bell pepper or whatever else. We can very, very easily find out whether or not they're good for us based on things that are not ideological. And it's wonderful to see these truths come forward as people just do the research for themselves.
Yeah.
Find out what these things are. Don't say that Nicole's wrong or that Paul's a lunatic. Go and find out what these ingredients are, and you'll discover as you like. I noticed when I started to become aware of my nutrition in 2012, 2013, it became very apparent that there was no marketing out there that I was going to receive from a grocery store that would actually teach me how to buy less groceries.
Yeah.
Right? And that right there is one of the fundamental discoveries that I made for myself, that when you buy quality nutrition at a higher price per pound, you eat considerably less and you're not finding yourself spending more on groceries.
Well, it's sort of the calorie in and calorie out, right? When you take something in, if you have something that's going to fuel all of your cells in your body and it's going to keep you full longer, then you want to have as much of that as possible, but also as little of that as possible, because you get fuller faster, if that makes sense.
Yep.
And I mean, that's one of the things that we want to be able to teach in truth, is that you get to take yourself on and challenge yourself in that paradigm so that you can say, okay, what makes me full and what keeps me fueled longer? And when do I have those crashes? When do I have the energy to just go forever? And it helps you to sort of move along in that pattern and really feel into your body. And so that's part of the truth as well. Like, we just really want to be able to support topics of discussions where you can come to us and say, this is what I'm thinking and this is what I have, and I'm challenged with this because this is what I've thought. So I'd like to have the truth on this topic discussed. And that's what we want to be able to do in truth. I think that we have such a lack of faith in our food supply that we aren't really certain what we're getting is fueling our bodies. And so imagine if you could actually come into a discussion or a group and you can actually have, okay, so I don't feel good when I'm eating this. Why is that? And what am I lacking? Is there a nutrient that I'm specifically lacking? And how can I get that nutrient? And that's what we want to be able to help you with in truth.
Yeah. And be able, exactly. Almost like you're coaching people on how to be more aware of their body's responses to what they're eating. You don't notice it if you've been eating a certain way for 8, 10, 20, 30, 50 years, right? It's becomes so natural to you that, if you eat something different, it's important to notice the difference that you feel in day to day, right? And, because I noticed for myself, the results were not always immediate, right? There were some things that actually had a delayed response where oh, okay, this skin condition actually cleared up after 3 months, right? There were things that happened immediately for sure. I felt more energy. I lost a lot of weight right away. I lost 60 pounds in 3 months. And
Mhm.
so, noticing the difference. I mean, if you ever want to figure out how much that is, grab a box of books, weigh it down with, like, 40, 50 books, and just walk up and down the stairs a couple of times and just see how winded you get, right? Like, that's what it was like for me all the time. And
Yeah.
within 3 months, I lost all that weight, and it's just like, no wonder I had way more energy. I'm not hauling this massive library of books with me everywhere, right? So, this speaks to that, the importance of recognizing, what does your body feel like when it's eating this new thing, or this
Mhm.
thing that you're introducing, and test it out for a couple of weeks. Like, don't just take our word for it, right?
Well, and I think
Make
that's the biggest thing too, is it's not overnight. It's
right.
definitely not overnight. And learning it does absolutely take time to figure out where your starting point is to where your end point is. I often say that if you're going to take a stance on yourself, 30 days is great, but 90 days is better, because
Mhm,
90 days gives a full cycle for you to actually go in and turn around and say, hey, this is what I'm noticing and this is what I'm seeing. Um,
mhm,
and like I said, even if it's just oxalates that you look into and you're like, oh, wow, I had no idea. But I do notice that I have migraines, or I do notice that I have these different ailments. And so then you can actually look at supporting yourself and your system based on how you're feeling internally, and not on how someone else is telling you to feel.
mhm. Yeah. Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. Okay, well, so once that truth aspect comes apart, and we kind of already dove into the food pillar, as a result of that conversation, because they're just so intertwined. But what else would you mention about food regarding pillar?
I think it's important to know where your food comes from. So,
Right.
where a lot of people say that they like grain finished animals better, but if you think about a lot of the ailments that are around in our society right now, grain is actually something that a lot of us cannot digest. And so, if you're looking for the purest quality of meat, it is grass fed, grass finished, and that means that it is being fed grass for its entirety of life up until butcher. And then
Mhm.
once it has been butchered, it's still on grass. So you get
Yeah.
that full cycle where there's no inflammation in that animal's body. And so also knowing, like, just how they're raised, how they're loved, there's a difference in energy when you feel into the animal and you feel into your food source. I've had friends tell me that they can spiritually feel what their meat has experienced. And
Mhm.
I think you can feel that with anything, plants, with fruits, and with animals, and with humans. I mean, we're spiritual beings and we're spiritual creatures. So that's a very important piece of everything that we're about, is feeling into those frequencies and those energies. And so when you know that your animal is truly cared for and given the utmost love and respect for what it fuels their bodies, it carries over into us as well.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because there are some places where it's garbage. We don't even know that the meat is meat.
Right.
There's lab grown meats being talked about right now. And what is a lab grown meat? It's not true meat. It's fake.
Yeah.
So you're
Yeah.
putting fakeness into your body, and that energy is absolutely going to transfer into you. So having foods that are real is really, really important.
Yeah. Well, and, I mean, you think about it, you are what you eat, right? So,
100%.
do you really want to be a simulation? Like, oh, yeah. All right, so let's move on. What else? Is there anything else about food you wanna chat about, or should we go into community?
Community.
All right. Community is my favorite.
Yeah.
Thanks.
The community that we've built thus far is amazing. And I think the outreach of people that are really wanting to understand and know what's coming into their circle of influence is really important. And it's been so incredible just to be on this journey and really connect with people that are on the same journey as we are, or maybe a little bit different, and we get to have those discussions and see where they want to be and how they want to operate. But
Yeah.
it's been amazing just to have that community come together in support of farmers, and it just brings it back to, really, I feel, more of a connection. It's not the drive into your garage, close the garage door and run inside. It's, you're actually, hey, how are you doing? Like, let's have a conversation. Let's talk. Let's move on. Like, it's amazing just to have
Yeah.
that building. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I know, like, the working the markets for me is one of the greatest joys that I have. There can be a lot of bad things going on with my life. When I'm at the market and I'm there meeting people face to face, building relationships with people, and seeing the smile that occurs between a farmer and a customer. Someone's going to take that food, right, literally went from the farm, came to the table at the market, and then someone is going to take that food that grew from the ground not 20 kilometers away. They're going to take that home and get to eat it at their table. And, like, why not? We talk about, like, we keep hearing about how important it is that we are more efficient and we're more, responsible with our natural resources, and we're literally driving across miles of land where food grows and grazes to get to a place where food, it's all there, right? And that food travel across thousands of miles across land where food grows and grazes, so that you can have your avocado, right? It's like, folks, I know we can be more efficient here. And guess what? These farmers are already ready, willing, and able to be your food supply. We
But I
don't
think,
have the grocery store to get these things. You'll have it more efficiently. You'll be able to have higher quality foods. And for gosh sakes, you're not supporting conglomerates of grocery stores that are all owned by one of two companies.
when it's nice for the farmers, because like you said, it's that farm to table. So you get to bring
Yeah.
it, you get to learn, and you get to know. I think one of the main things that I really love about it is it's really taught my children where food comes from, because I think that they forget. Like, you just basically put it in your refrigerator at home, put it to the
Yeah.
table after you've cooked it, and they eat their food, and then they go off and they do whatever they want to do. Whereas now it's a discussion. It's like, oh, well, Mom, what are we eating tonight? Is this beef? Is this lamb? Is this bison? Like, what are we having? And so
Yeah.
it gives them a variety of conversation to actually have. And I remember the first time that we actually went out and saw chickens having eggs, right?
Yeah.
So a laying hen.
Yeah.
And my one daughter, she looked at me and she was like, that came out of the chicken's butt. And I was like, well, it did, but it's not really the chicken's butt. So it led into just a deeper conversation of where it comes from and what it means and what nutrients there are in it, and also how it helps the hen, and that it actually isn't fertilized until a rooster comes along. So just lots of different things. It was a really
Oh, man, isn't that something? Like, we are missing out on our education system so much, right? Like, how cool is that? What a great lesson. I remember when we actually started this kind of goes back to truth and how much we value a strong, good, healthy education. Beginning of 2021, we started up a wild school where parents just brought their kids out, because of all of the weird stuff going on at school. Parents brought their kids out, and we taught them how to collect eggs. We taught them how to feed the horses. We taught them, about plant medicine in the forest. We showed them how to do chores. Like, it's hilarious to see just how much different kids can be when they're in that environment versus one where they're told to sit down and shut up and regurgitate the data that they were taught last week.
Or even they're not even told to sometimes regurgitate it. It's just like, let's move on. We don't have time to talk about things. So it's been a really nice eye-opening experience for both of my girls, and and for us as parents. Like, it's not things that we were necessarily taught either, but I remember some of my favorite moments growing up with my dad was going to work with him. So, and it just creates a different experience and a different outcome for all parties involved. And
Yeah.
community just really gets to sort of hone in on that, and it brings the ranchers together with people, and we get just to go back to the basics. And I think that the basics is sometimes a lot more simple.
Yeah. And the last thing that I got to say about this is, how awesome would it be to be a part of such a movement where you're not just delivering food, you're building strong relationships. Like your daughter is going to remember that day probably for the rest of her life, right? First of all. But
Yeah.
now, you can say, "Hey, do you want to go to Farmer Brown's farm again?" Right?
Yeah.
And now you have community being built automatically from within the heart and soul of our existence. Like, this is our food we're talking about here, right? What a beautiful anchor, and the opportunity for people to be a part of this decentralization of the food supply. I truly believe that the community leaders that do this, like, they're going to see a generational impact
Mhm.
for everybody that's their neighbor.
Yeah,
It's gonna
absolutely.
be huge. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, so stewardship is the fourth pillar. Now, whenever I see stewardship as the fourth pillar, I always default into thinking that this is about making sure that the farmers are being good stewards of the land, which is part of it.
Part of it.
But you make that so much more beautiful. So go ahead.
The stewardship is partnering at the roots with the ranchers. So you it's giving the farmers the opportunity to focus on the animals themselves and also on the land, because without the land being its most optimal, that we don't have the animals in their most optimal stage. And so if they're allowed to focus on that without worry of where those animals are going to go or be sold to, or the like having to give them to the bigger corporations, send them to auction, all of those things. If they can just focus on the animals and the land, it brings everything back into that balance. And so it's a lovely system, and it kind of by surprise just came up where you have the truth, the food, the community, and in turn you get the stewardship. So
Mhm.
it brings it just all together, and everyone working those roots, and it's that root and the balance to bring balance back to the earth and then back to ourselves. It's the energy creation, really.
Yeah, yeah, and, it's interesting how it's almost mirroring that magic of nature, how it just is a nice, beautiful feedback loop.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
just kind of goes in cycle, and but it's a beautiful way of life.
yeah, absolutely. Now, how is it that, someone can get started in initiating this for their community? What are some of the steps that they would have to take in order to, make sure these farmers got organized, make sure that you had, order forms for the people that wanna to connect with these farmers? How is it what are some of the steps that you've had to take in order to get to where you are now?
Building the relationships with the farmers is a big step, and so I connect with different ranchers, and so leaders of communities. In all honesty, they're leading their community into a different way of life and a different way of thinking, and so I create partnerships with them, and they then balance by communicating with me, and I'll in turn get them in contact with everybody else that wants to be a part of it. One of the things that we do is we have different relationships with different farmers so that their foods are readily accessible to our community.
Mhm,
Mhm.
mhm. That's awesome. So, yeah, and then, like, right now, you're working on, some pretty cool things. You got distribution network now. You're in how many markets are you in now? 3? 3
Yeah,
different
three
farmers
or
markets?
four. We're in 3 or 4.
Yeah, yeah. and always looking to expand. And so there are opportunities for people to be a part and partner with us to help connect these farmers with their communities. And so to do that, would they just contact you? I guess email you probably is best right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Email
Okay.
is the best, NicoleK@lifecraft.me.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. And what else? What else did you want to like when people are connecting with you? What's the process like? How do we get them started? What can they expect uh, the next steps to be?
It depends on what we're looking at or we're looking to do. So, for example, if you're a rancher and you want to connect with us because you have chickens that you would like to feed ancestrally consistent, then we have meal plans that are put in place for our ranchers and farmers, and we talk about those things to see if it's feasible and doable, and then we help you build that community for your chickens. So essentially, you're building a community for your animals, and like mealworms, things like that. Different food sources that we want to make sure that our chickens are getting, or pigs. And so, if you are a farmer or rancher and you do want to go back to ancestrally consistent ways, just reach out to me and we'll have a conversation and see if that's a viable option for you.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
awesome.
I mean, the other thing that we want to do too is we want to build our community. So we do have, you can join our email list, and together with we grow and build, you'll be a part of learning what we have, what foods we have to offer, what ranches are a part of our community, what courses that we have available, and different programs and things like that. Because, like I said, it's one thing to have a physical body that's working great and functionally, but if your mind isn't connected with your physicality, then there's out of balance there for you as well.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, it's amazing. And so, from my perspective, what I see here, especially for those who are watching now, we have to recognize when an opportunity really strikes, how important it is that we take it, run with it. We've got a massive trend that's occurring right now where, like we mentioned, there's insecurity of the food supply. We don't really know how nutritious this stuff is. We've got another trend where more lockdowns are coming. And so then we know that that's another initiative to shrink down our economy even further. And that trend is creating a lot of energy on the backside of that, where people are like, no, 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 no. These are our communities. These are our businesses that you're talking about, and we gotta stand up together. That trend of standing up together to against these orders that are simply unfounded and certainly unlawful. That movement is getting to the point where this is just the next natural progressive step that we take in taking back our nation, in having more self-governance within our communities, so that we're not passing that responsibility of making sure that our community is fed to organizations that have no interest in our health. This is very, very fundamental and key moment through in history that presents a powerful opportunity for people who are inspired to help their community
Mm-hmm.
shorten the distance between those good farmers that are growing the wholesome food and the people that want it on their table.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It just takes it back to um, the basics, where it's like you're walking down the street to your local farmer.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
No, and so in light of that, folks, if this is something that would inspire you, if this is an action that you see yourself taking as a leader within your community, message Nicole. Her email there is on the screen, NicoleK@lifecraft.me. It's very exciting to see Nicole, and having been a part of this whole community building and helping people, stand up again to not comply with tyrannical orders. Helping communities work together. Like we were doing movie nights back in 2020, making sure that those relationships got fostered. We did fireside chats through the summertime. We went camping together. We made sure that our communities had opportunities to collaborate. And seeing today just how profound this transformation is becoming, and
Mhm.
how NutritionCraft has positioned itself so uniquely in being able to retake our food supply. I mean, we know what's happening next. This is the most amazing opportunity that anyone can really align themselves with. So if this is inspiring to you, I really encourage you, message Nicole. And again, thank you so much for thank you so much. I'm just going to look at the comments here to see if there's any comments coming in. There might be something disconnected about the YouTube thing because I got it going to two different YouTube channels at the same time. But I don't see anything right now. But I'm sure if there's any desire to ask questions about what was talked about, feel free to email Nicole there as well.
Absolutely. I look
Cool.
forward to hearing it from anybody.
Awesome. Everybody have a good night.
Thanks.